Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Mosaic Midweek. Hey, we're gonna try something a little different. I know not all of you have, an hour or so to watch our whole online service. So what we're gonna try is doing a 5 to 8 minute kind of condensed version on Wednesdays of what we talked about on Sunday. Well, we have been going through the life of Moses, and we dove into Exodus chapter 3 and 4. And let's dive into Exodus 3, verse 1 through 2. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here I am. First, the thing we talked about on Sunday was that God did not speak to Moses until Moses chose to turn aside. So many times we need to turn back towards God. We need to turn towards him, and then God will speak to us. Once God sees that we are turning towards him, that's when God will start to speak to us. Exodus 3, verse 5. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you're standing is holy ground. We talked about how a place is holy not because of that certain place is important, but because God's presence is there. It's God's presence that matters, not a certain place. Exodus 3, 5 through 6. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, and he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? First question I think we all ask at some point in our life is, who am I? Who am I, Moses is asking, to set the people free? Who am I, God, to marry this woman, to raise these kids, to start that nonprofit, to take this step of faith? So many times we're asking, who am I? And how does God respond? I love this. He said, but I will be with you. Verse 12. And this shall be the sign for you that I've sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. God doesn't answer that question of Moses. Instead, the way he answers it is saying, hey, you know what? It doesn't really matter who you are. What matters is that I, your God, will be with you. Verse 13, then Moses said to God, if I come to the place of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? Second question we're all asking is, what kind of God are you? What kind of God are you? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of the fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. Who is God? He is what we need. He says, I am that I am. I am who I'm going to be. I am your deliverer. I am your father. I am your provider. I am your healer. Whatever you need, that is who I am. And I love that God points us back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God is both good, God of the good, as well as the bad sides of us. He doesn't say he's the God of Abraham, Jacob, and Israel. He says he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob, the trickster. Jacob, the one who deceived his father and his brother by stealing the birthright, by stealing the blessing. His name was changed to Israel, but God says, you know what? I'm the God of Jacob, as well as Abraham and Isaac. I'm the God of Jacob. So we all ask, who am I? God, what kind of God are you? And the third thing we ask, chapter 4, verse 1 through 2, then Moses answered, but behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. The Lord said to him, what is in your hand? And we see the story of Moses. He throws down the staff, it comes a snake, and he picks it back up. And the Lord is asking each and every one of us, what is in your hand? What is that talent, that ability, that resource, the wealth, the time that God has given you? What is that thing in your hand? And I love what we see later on in verse 20. And the Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead." So Moses took his wife and his sons and had them ride on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Wait a minute. I thought it was Moses' staff, but it's God's staff, but it's Moses' staff, but it's God's staff, but it's Moses' staff. It's both. In the same way, I think so many of us have been gifted with the ability to make money, to start businesses, to have talents, abilities. We have time, we have resources in our hands. And is it ours? Is it God's? Is it ours? Is it God's? The answer is it's both. So here's what we learned on Sunday. Number one is, who am I? That's what we can find our identity in God. And the answer is God will be with us. Number two, what kind of God are you? Well, he's the God of the good. He's the God of the bad. He's the God of everything in between. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is what we need him to be. I am that I am. And God asks us, what's in your hand? What's that thing that you've been blessed with that you can use for God's glory and for his kingdom? What can you use for God's glory and his kingdom? Well, I hope you have a great week. And thanks for joining us for this week's Mosaic Midweek, as we did kind of a mini wrap up, just kind of going over what we went over on Sunday. Because again, I know not all of you have an hour to watch the whole service, but here's just a quick 5 to 8 minute recap of what we learned on Sunday. Have a great week.